You're listening to the Racer to Racer podcast. I'm your co-host, Aaron McAtee. Our other co-host, you may have seen him coming out of a great clips with a big old smile on his face. You've probably seen him at a dirt track. He is the man, the myth, the legend, Scott Bowie.
Hey, Aaron, what's going on?
Not much. How are you?
Great, man. So great to be here. First podcast.
Yep.
The first official one.
First interview. So we have a great guest tonight with Jagger Jones.
Jagger Jones. You know, I'm so happy to have Jagger on. I'm so glad that he agreed to be our first guest.
Absolutely.
You know, I'm a huge fan of Jagger. On and off the track, he's a great person, great race car driver, college student right now. So, yeah, just so happy to have him on.
Yeah, no, I think it'll be great. And for those who don't know, obviously his grandfather is 1963 Indy 500 winner, Parnelli Jones.
Yeah, 1962 track record setter, 150, the first man to officially run 150 at Speedway. Mm-hmm. His dad is PJ Jones. PJ, some people know him from midgets, some people know him from Indy cars, some people know him from his days in sports cars when he was driving for Dan Gurney. He and the Toyota GTP car, man, they were just special. You know, that team was something special. And Fangio drove the other car, and man, they just set track records everywhere. They just broke the track record, his track record at Daytona just last year with the Mazda. So, I mean, you know, just he comes from a great racing family. He's a great person himself, and man, I just couldn't be happier with our first guest.
Yeah, no, I'm definitely excited. With this, I think everyone will enjoy the interview. So let's kind of talk about the past week of racing. So first off, it feels good to, you know, actually be able to watch racing again. I think things are slowly starting to come back to normal. I know IMS just announced that they're having what is 40%, right? 40% capacity for the 500.
I think it's 40%. Yeah.
I just got my vaccine today, so I can get a bronze badge. So I'm happy about that. So hopefully, you know, things will kind of feel back to normal. So I think it's going to be a pretty normal month for the most part. I think, you know, the big difference will be, you know, there'll be more check-ins. You know, you're probably going to have to wear a mask. But other than that, you know, I'm just excited that, you know, things are slowly starting to come back to normal.
Yeah, I'm happy about it too. I'm happy for the Speedway. I'm happy for Roger Penske to finally start seeing his brand new baby.
Absolutely.
he gets to see it walk a little bit for him, you know, and they've done so much work over there. And you and I both live fairly close to Speedway, and
yeah.
I don't know about you, but I've seen Roger outside showing people, you know, things he wants done, and you can see the changes. You know, so I'm just excited. You know, it's a new chapter, and IndyCar kicking off. IndyCar's got a pretty good vibe right now, you know, with the younger drivers and the driver coming over from F1, Grosjean, and of course Jimmy Johnson. You know, Jimmy taking a huge, you know, just a huge step in terms of walking out of his comfort zone, walking into something totally foreign to him. And he's embracing it. He's enjoying it. And I think it's really, you know, just for me personally, I think it's great to see somebody he's just walking in without any ego at all. And he's just saying, hey, I want to do this. And, you know, he's bringing sponsors. He's bringing visibility to it. And, you know, like I mentioned before, rising tide raises all boats. And I think he will raise some boats with this.
Yeah, and I mean, you know, obviously, I think there's some people that are kind of, you know, wondering what's going on with him. But one thing to keep in mind is, you know, he drove a NASCAR for 20 years. I mean, that's pretty much all he knew, and he's jumping into something that's just completely foreign. And you know, as Jagger will explain in our interview, you know, it's a big difference going from, you know, one car to another car. But you know, one thing to keep in mind is he won, what was it, 7 or 8 championships in NASCAR?
7.
So you don't win 7 championships and not be talented. So he'll definitely learn. I know he's thinking now about doing. I know there's been some rumors that he's gonna try to do the 2022 Indy 500. So, that'll be exciting. I think, I think he'll be super fast there. I mean, it's not going to be, I don't think it'll be as big as learning curve for him. I could be completely wrong. But we've seen, guys like Kurt Busch come over and, I mean, he could have won the race. So,
yeah, boy, people kind of forgot about that. And how about the job Kurt Busch did that year, right?
Yeah.
And that was really an odd time in his career. It really, I think, allowed people to see him a little different light, and he was impressive. He had the one crash, but crashing at Speedway is not unusual. I mean, they'll get you.
Oh yeah.
So what Barber ran today, or St. Pete ran today. Barber ran last week. Sorry. We had Palou win last week, driving for Ganassi. Unfortunately, it was kind of a big crash at the start. Not that took away at all from Alex's win, but today you had Colton Herta just destroy that field. I mean, you got Joseph Newgarden, who was a two-time race winner in a row. At the end, it was 2.5, 3 seconds behind, but then they had a yellow with 10 to go or 12 to go or something like that.
Right, yeah, something like that.
Good day of racing, hard racing. Had a couple incidents, but it's fairly clean.
Yeah, I think the level of competitiveness now is just, I think it's probably the best it's ever been. I mean, there's a lot of new guys that, I mean, Jack Harvey, that dude, I mean, he's super quick now, and he's been quick the past couple of years, so that's really exciting to see.
Well, you look at Simon Pagenaud, and you see Will has re-signed for next year and going on, and then of course Newgarden's not going anywhere, and then you got McLaughlin who's learning, and then some people are kind of saying, "Boy, I don't know about Pagenaud. I don't think Penske's going to run 4 cars." Well, Pagenaud just ran third today.
Right.
So I mean, I would take that type of fall off any day if I was a race car driver. You know what I'm saying? So it's going to be a heck of a year, I think, in IndyCar, and I think this 500 coming up is going to be intense. I think it's going to be close, and I think it's going to be intense.
Absolutely.
That's as far as other news, I think USAC's out of the East. USAC sprint cars are out of the East. I think they conclude that East Coast trip tonight. You had Leary win last night, and I don't remember who won the first 2 races, but Leary won last night. First win for that new team he's in. So that's been really competitive. I think they've had 25 cars out there. The Eastern guys have really picked up. The Eastern, I don't know about tonight, but the Eastern sprint car guys have had fast time every night. So, that's been really competitive. Another kind of sprint car news, sad to say that we lost a legend in the sport this week, Steve Stapp. A lot of people know him by the Bopper. I was lucky enough to have Steve come in our shop when I still had a race shop. He had the most amazing stories, the most amazing philosophies on things. He always had those bib overalls on and that, but he'd sucker you in with those bib overalls thinking he's one way, and that guy was always thinking, always trying to figure things out. But like I said, a funny man. I hope to have maybe his son Andy on our show in the future. But it's sad to lose somebody like Steve. He's in the Sprint Car Hall of Fame. He and Pancho Carter, I think, won 40 sprint car races together, which I believe is the all-time record for driver-owner combination. So it's a sad day. It's sad this week, and racing also lost Bill Whittington this week, so that too sad. I don't know a ton about Bill. I know by his IndyCar, and I know somebody's sports cars. But he was especially in sports cars, heck of a race car driver, and just sad. But it's like everything else, right? I mean, it goes on. And, there's another race tomorrow or next week.
Yep, absolutely. Well, before we get into the Jagger episode, this Racer Racer podcast is presented by Race 92. Race 92 is a vintage-inspired racing apparel brand specializing in celebrating vintage race car culture and adapting to motorsports today. And I will mention I have hot off the press Racer to Racer
Oh, nice.
podcast shirt on, and those will be available on race92.com.
I like it. I like that shirt a lot. I have to do like 5 episodes before I get one, right? Isn't that the trade-off?
We'll get you one. I was going to ask you. I'll get you one.
Oh, that's so funny. No, that's great. I love the logo, and I love how you've, Aaron's the technical guy of this show. Aaron's the one that does all the real grunt work. Hopefully one of these days I can take a little bit of that load off of him, but he does all the designs of the shirts, and he edits the show and all that. I just want to say thanks for all that. But
Absolutely.
I really enjoy the logo with the cassette tape, and that's pretty great.
Yeah, no problem. But yeah, for those wondering how you can listen to our show, obviously you're listening to it now, so you found a way to listen to it. But it's also on YouTube, and then through Anchor FM. We're on all the major podcast platforms, so you can find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, you name it, we're probably on it.
Oh man, I like it when you just drop those promotions. Those are the best.
Yep.
And we got, we're to the point where we got to have people hit that subscribe button too.
Oh yeah, thank you. Make sure you give us a follow. Hit subscribe on YouTube below. And we're looking forward to we got a couple other people lined up, and we're super excited to see who else we can get on the show.
Yeah, and it's kind of funny how things worked out where we went with a younger driver at first, which was kind of not how it was going to be, but
right.
But I think that's great too, because now we're going to, as we've said all along, we just want to talk to people in racing, and I don't care if we run across a 14-year-old with a good story, or a 12-year-old, or a 10-year-old, or an 80-year-old, in any facet of the sport, man. I just can't wait to hear these stories.
Yeah, no, for sure. So I think without any further ado, we'll just go right into our interview. Hope everyone enjoys it. And we'll see you again next week with another good interview.
Our guest today is Jagger Jones. Jagger is, some people may know him from the karting circles. Some people may know him from West Coast late models. Some people may know him from his time in the NASCAR ARCA Series, which today would be the NASCAR ARCA Series. He ran a lot at ARCA West. He ran some in the Midwest, the East-West Showdown Series. Jagger, how you doing today?
I'm doing good, and I'm excited. Very first episode for you guys, and I'm glad to be on here.
Hey, man, I am so glad to have you on here. You're a young man, done a lot of racing. You're 18 right now, 19?
Yes, I'm 18.
18, getting ready to turn 19 here shortly. Finishing his first year. I don't know what a year is, but first year of college. At where is it you're going?
I'm going to High Point University, just about an hour out of Charlotte, North Carolina.
Nice. Just keeping that racing vibe near you.
Yes.
Is there a lot of people that people would recognize from racing, like the last names or whatever, their kids going to High Point, or?
There's a few kids that go here and race some late model stuff out here. I know Austin Dillon went here.
Okay.
A few, I don't know if he ended up graduating, but I know he went here for a few years. And then there's Tate Fogelman goes here, who races the truck series. I don't think that's about it. There's some kids a lot of kids into racing that go here, which was definitely a change for me coming from Arizona, where you tell people at your school that you're a race car driver and they look at you like you're an alien. So it's definitely cool to be in this area, cool to be an hour from basically the whole NASCAR scene, and that was definitely a reason why I came out here.
How many of your how I'm just curious, like how many of your friends like actually know like you're a race car driver? Like does everyone, or do you like not tell them, or how does that work?
Well, with social media these days,
Right, yeah.
everyone finds out about everything. So I would say about everyone that I know here knows I'm a race car driver, just because the whole social media thing, and it's cool to have my friends here are very supportive, and I would say, I mean, I don't bring it up, but they quickly find out already,
Right. Yeah, it'd be hard to kind of slide into the DMs and for them to look at your Instagram, and yeah,
that's
I'm
funny.
sure it doesn't help with the ladies either.
No, I mean, it's definitely, I would say it's the opposite. I would say, if anything, it did help, especially not flexing here, as
Right,
kids would say these days, but having the blue check on Instagram to college kids or to young teenagers is like, they're like, wow.
Oh, you got the
check on Instagram.
You got the blue check?
They care. I tell them I'm a race car driver. They're like, oh, that's cool. And then they see my Instagram. They're like, wow, you're verified on Instagram. They think that's way cooler. So,
I bet.
It's funny.
So what?
Yeah.
So what is that? I was just curious. Like, this is kind of off topic, but like, how do you get like a verified check mark?
For me, when I was racing the K&N series 2 years ago, the people that were part of just like the NASCAR marketing team were like trying to promote all the young drivers a lot.
Gotcha.
And they just sent me an email. They're like, oh, like send me your picture of your driver's license and this, and we have like a connection at Instagram, and they'll get you verified. And I was like, yeah, of course. I think that'll help me with about anything I do. So
yeah,
that was pretty exciting.
Yeah, it's cool.
Man, Jagger with the lumber in the social status. I like it.
Funny.
He so Jagger started racing. People who know him or know his family's last name, the Jones family, been synonymous with racing since the late 50s. And but Jagger's carved out his own name, and Jagger has done things kind of his way and how he wanted to do them, and started racing. How old were you started racing karts?
I was about 9 years old, I think 9 or 10.
9 or 10, and then you had said we'd talked before, and you had said that you actually went and ran in Europe a little bit, kind of looking to do the F1 thing, possibly, if that worked out. Then that kind of just, for whatever reason, plans changed, dreams change. He ended up coming back to America, and ended up in the stock car world, which seems like a million miles away from F1, but it seems to, oddly enough, if you look, guys kind of go, the F1 guys kind of talk about NASCAR more than they talk about IndyCar sometimes.
Yeah, I think obviously just because we have NASCAR's got a bigger stage, bigger fan base here in America. But like you were saying, I started racing when I was 9. I remember just growing up at the racetrack. My earliest memories are either me watching my dad and my grandpa at the racetrack, or me sitting in front of a TV playing with diecast, watching the NASCAR, IndyCar races. So those are just my earliest memories. And I remember when I was a kid always being asked, oh, are you going to be a race car driver one day? You want to be a race car driver one day? And obviously, as a little kid who just loved racing, loved cars, my answer was always, of course, yeah, like it's just a matter of when. And for me to start racing, I mean, I remember I first got a go-kart when I was about 6 years old. I thought it was the coolest thing. It had a Jeff Gordon paint scheme, number 24 on the side of it. And that just transitioned into me getting a different go-kart a couple years later, starting racing. And I remember my second race, I was just instantly hooked when I was about 9 years old. And from there, just my personal passion of racing really took off.
Now, knowing your dad a little bit, I am surprised he didn't paint that and put a big number 1 on it, or something that would represent PJ Jones more than Jeff Gordon.
That's funny. Yeah, I remember, when I started racing, I was always 98 my whole karting days. So,
right.
Once it got important, once people were watching and I was actually racing. We always had our own decals made. We always had our own sticker kits made with all of our people on it, and always 98 on it, both me and my brother.
If people go out to float racing, you can catch all right, maybe even YouTube. You can catch a race from Ventura in about 1990. It's a heat race, midget race, and your dad wins the heat race, and he makes sure to let Jeff know that he won it. He pulls up next to him, gives him a nice wave. Your dad can be a little aggressive at times, but that is him though, and you're a little bit different. You're aggressive, but in a different way. I feel like you're
absolutely.
I feel like
I'm definitely more calm.
Yeah, yeah. I feel like just watching you, just a couple times I've been able to see you race. You're really keep cool under pressure. Somebody gets into you, you don't really react to it too much. You always seem like you're trying to think ahead. That's the impression I get. Some guys are always right in that moment, which you have to be. But then there's other guys who are in the moment, but they're kind of trying to see the big picture too.
Yeah, for sure. I think I kind of had a very smart, aggressive racing style. I could be aggressive when I needed it and when I felt comfortable, but I was pretty calm pretty mellow when it came to the big picture side of things. And then I'd try to just be aggressive as I could when I needed to. Obviously, for me, I always felt aggression came with being comfortable with what I was racing. And I would say I was mostly stayed out of trouble more than a lot of other people throughout all my racing, which was a good and bad thing. Sometimes I wish I was a little more aggressive, but I think as I got older, I just got more aggressive. Probably just came with confidence.
So, as Scott was saying, obviously, your dad is PJ Jones, your grandfather's Parnelli Jones. What was the best advice you ever got from one of them while starting racing?
I think from my grandpa, really, he always talked a lot about there's a difference between a driver and like a racer. A driver can go out there and run fast, but not everyone's a racer, and a racer is a winner in his eyes, someone that wins races. And I think that was important for me to learn from a young age. Like, there's a difference between a racer and a driver, just in the sense where you got to learn how to win. He always would say that learning how to win is really important, because a lot of times, like, I remember when I was younger, I would be close to like winning a race, but I didn't necessarily close the deal. And he always taught me, he's like, you got to learn how to win. And I didn't really make sense to me at first, but once I kind of thought about that and once that clicked, I think that really helped me learn just how to be competitive, learn how to like maximize the most out of every race.
Yeah, I've told Aaron this before, and I said it a little bit on Chili Bowl podcast. I've been lucky enough to be around your grandfather a little bit and have some conversations with him. We don't know each other or anything like that, but just to be able to talk to him a little bit. And the thing that's always impressed me about him is he's obviously an older man now, but he like the way he thinks, man, is always as that race car driver. He and Mario remind me a lot of each other. That that he talks about the aggressive, and he just knows how to win, and he was never afraid to change with the times. If you listen to him talk, he could change with the times. He followed the sport and he stayed up on it. He saw the trends, and for people who don't know, he owned race cars for a long time, and he's an interesting guy. And it's even more interesting is how many racers that he helped. People don't even realize, whether it was Jason Leffler or Rick Mears or just Kevin Cogan, or there's so many different people and guys I don't even know about, but just I've heard him talk about and mention, it's pretty amazing the influence he's had in the sport. How relevant, I guess the term I was trying to find, just how relevant he always stayed in the sport as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, he won everything from NASCAR races to the Baja 1000 to the Indy 500, owned an F1 team. Like, I just feel like there's not a lot of figures that have existed ever like that. Obviously, you say people like Mario and people like that I think it takes a certain type of person to be that successful in so many things. And I mean, he's definitely one of them.
Oh, yeah, I absolutely agree. And, man, and anybody got to be around your family a little bit, and I'm sure it's like this in a lot of families, competitive.
Absolutely.
I mean, ultra competitive at everything.
Yeah. 100%.
Yeah.
I will say, Scott, during the Chili Bowl, you told that one story of Parnelli, and that's one of my favorite stories I think I've ever heard about the. I'm sorry, what's that, Scott?
So we were driving.
Yep, that story. Thank you.
We were driving. So it was Jace's birthday, and we were going to Disney. And Jace's might have been Jace's first or second.
Yeah, Jace is my younger brother, by the way, for people listening. Yeah.
Or I call him P1 because he always qualifies up front. So
yeah.
So we were in Parnelli was driving, and I was just sitting there, and he just says to me, he goes, "You know what?" I said, "What's that?" And he goes, "I can tell you everything that these cars in front of me are going to do. Anything that they're going to do, I already know they're going to do it." Because he said, I've studied what they've done. I study how they drive. I study their tendencies. And it's a small insight to how his mind works when it comes to driving.
Mm-hmm. And I'm sure a lot of drivers are very similar to that.
Sure. I just thought it was a pretty interesting story. Interesting experience, to hear him say that, because that just gives you a peek into a driver's mind.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of drivers think the same, just in the sense of learning how to be competitive, learning, like, trying to just find the absolute limit of the smallest things that make a difference of you in the car. And I think that's obviously one of them. I've heard him say, I've been in the car riding with him, and I've heard him say the same thing. And I think just racing just breeds people, and it makes people like think differently and think it's just such a competitive atmosphere, because you're just fighting for the last little bit. A lot, like, and I think that just goes back to like a lot of him saying, like, a lot of people can drive a car, but when you're in a race and drive a car and go fast, but just racing is a whole different deal. And I think that's what makes like the greats a lot different than people that either didn't make it or the people that had some success, but versus like the best.
Yeah, there's that, I don't know if you call it that final 1%, or I don't know what you would call it, but there's that thing that just separates them. Like, you look at Scott Dixon today, he just sits there and all of a sudden he just runs fifth,
Yeah, on a bad day. That's what I would call it.
He's not slowing down at all. Like, it seems like there for a while, like, it seemed like he was getting faster with age.
Yeah, he's putting himself right in position to win another championship. Typically his seasons start off kind of just like this, finishing races, top 3, top 5, maybe a win. Then all of a sudden at the end of the year, guess what? Here he is, right in the hunt, looking for a championship. It's pretty impressive. I mean, it's
yeah, absolutely.
Very special.
I think it's cool that he's even the tracks that he's best at, like Texas, are like the ones where you would think like a young guy with like the most balls would come in and kind of surprise these guys. But those are the ones where you see him the best at, or the ovals, the street races, the ones where you think sometimes it takes more of a brave driver, maybe even a younger guy, that just risking it all, like Rossi out there. But Scott runs really well at all types of tracks.
I mean,
I tell you what, Rossi has some crazy saves. I'm sure you've seen some of the videos, but I think it was Texas. Wasn't it Texas like 2 years ago? Where got down into the apron, and then there was a car that came down, and he like swerved, like it was crazy. And that all, I mean, kind of goes back to the reaction times. And I mean, as a driver, like, and I'm sure you do a lot of working out and training, but a lot of your training probably is focused towards like reaction times and stuff like that as well, right?
Yeah, absolutely. If anyone wants to see like what, especially the IndyCar and all those guys like train and what they do and like what separates drivers, I think it's the Pit Fit Instagram basically.
Right. Yeah,
They basically have a good showcase of that, and it's like Tony Kanaan, Jimmy Johnson now in there, like Rossi, like all these guys all just reaction training, all just training that a normal person wouldn't do. And I think that's one thing that separates a lot of people.
yeah.
And that's a new thing too. I mean, that's been around for a while, but I don't think everyone was training like that necessarily. I know my grandpa back in the day definitely wasn't. So, yeah, I think that's just a future evolving thing. I've sat down and talked with Josh Wise a little bit, and he's on the NASCAR side. I'd say he's kind of leading that whole thing, that type of training. He's a little bit more behind the scenes with his stuff, but I think we're going to see a big push in that type of training in the next decade or so.
Yeah, you're going to have to. I mean, NASCAR, of course, I don't know. You got the new car coming online, I guess, next year. I don't know yet or not. Are they going to get more air inside the cockpits of those things so the driver would be cooler? Because, I mean, you've driven something similar. I mean, it has to be like
it gets hot in there.
Yeah.
I remember our race in Sonoma in the ARCA race was brutal. I remember my whole feet were all blistered up, and it's the worst is people don't realize it. It's fine when you're driving, but if you like go drive for half the race and then a red flag comes out for like 20 minutes and they always keep you in the car, that is the worst for a race car driver. That's the worst because you're just sitting in there behind the hot engine, no air moving. You don't have your air tube connected to your thing because you got the car turned off, so you have that turned off, and you're just sitting there just in the heat. That's the worst part about if a red flag comes out. But yeah, like I know that all the Indy guys today at St. Pete were all complaining about how hot it was with the aero screen and the humidity. But
and I know with the aero screen, I talked to Spencer Piggott, I think it was last year, and he was talking about the hose really doesn't do anything. I don't really know. I'm sure it's better in the NASCAR since they've kind of used that for 20 plus years now. But he was saying that it was most of the time it's hot air because the air intake is like right next to the engine. So of course it's going to be hot, as well as I think everything kind of builds up at the top of the head. So it's just, there's like no flow because particles and stuff get stuck in the helmet.
The NASCAR ones, the ones that I've used were most of the time had like where they would bring in air from outside, go through like some type of cooling machine, and then it would come to your helmet. So it was cold air, but I could see if it was just directly outside, the hose just straight from your helmet to the outside air, I could see how it wouldn't really make that much of a help.
Yeah, that's been the only drawback to that aero screen is that trying to, what used to be so much air, now it's just a dead zone. There's zero air. We were talking a little earlier about some of the people you've raced with. There's a pretty good photo from your win where Haley Deegan not very happy with you, and she's got her finger pointed at your helmet. Pretty funny. In retrospect.
Yeah, I mean, just going back to that whole year, I mean, the K&N West Series, we had, I would say 5 or 6 like competitive people winning races. Derek, obviously, Derek Kraus, Haley was really competitive all year. They were like our biggest competition, along with my teammate Trevor. So, and we had 15 races where there's 6 people you're competing for the wins. It was a very competitive field, but I wouldn't say it was like deep in competition. So we ended up fighting every race to the end, and tempers obviously boil when you're racing with the same person every week. and just the way those races played out. Usually, some of those smaller, older tracks, they're pretty abrasive. So the first whole half of the race, you're just saving, sitting in there aligned. We'd always end up getting a caution with 10 to go, and then now we were just waiting around the whole race, and now it's basically like just pouring out all your aggression into the final few restarts, and tempers get mad obviously on those little boring tracks. They just make that style of racing, especially with the heavier car, with the NASCAR body style right now. It's like such a square front end and square rear end where it's just so easy to push people out of the way without even hurting yourself. So obviously tempers happened and helped. It all ended up probably equaling out because we raced each other so much. I would get into someone, they'd get into someone,
Sure.
You'd get into them the next week. So I don't know. It just kind of became a style of our racing that year.
By the way, did you guys ever sell those T-shirts? I remember seeing them. So I think Roger Roarick did that design, right, Scott?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't think we never ended up making shirts of it, did we?
No, not of the drawing with you on top of the car.
Yeah.
No, and Roger Warwick, for people who don't know, brilliant artist, does art you would almost call it cartoon type art. So anybody that wants to see his work, either go to Roger Warwick's, I forget, like Instagram or Reddit or whatever, one of those things like that, or you can go to Toronto Motorsports, and they have a lot of his work. And he was very kind enough to do a drawing for Jagger to commemorate his first win. But we talked about shirts on that, and then shirts never happened. But you did have other shirts that sold out quickly. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, it was definitely a cool design. It was like me standing in front of my car with like holding the checker flag, and then it was like Haley on the side, like all like with a mad expression. It was funny.
Well, she's kicking rocks.
If she's kicking rocks, that's what
right.
It was. Yeah, but there's a picture of her like coming and like hitting me in the helmet while I was sitting in the car. But it went both ways. We both fought each other for a lot of wins, and I just ended up winning that one.
Yeah, right. I mean, then that's the thing. It's that's kind of a sign of the times of the sport too, where everybody's so young, because it's so different. Drivers used to be in their late 20s, early 30s when they got their break, and now you guys are all fighting to get these big breaks by the time you're 20, 22, 23. So you add the age, and then you add the speed of the necessity of getting somewhere. You're going to have that type of aggression.
Yeah, absolutely. And everyone sees like you start racing these kids when you're get into the ARCA series and stuff. But I mean, there's a lot of these kids that I raced against since I was like 10 years old when I started racing. Like, for example, Sam Mayer, I remember all the big go-kart races. It was like me and him were always racing each other. I raced Ty Gibbs in late models. I raced Haley was always at the go-kart track. So like by the time people and like fans start following these younger kids coming up, they've already been racing each other for 5 years. And I think that's something that people like often forget. And it just, you kind of get with the same kids from either where you're from or just like the style of racing you're doing. And sometimes you race those kids when you're up and coming all the way till you're in the Cup series.
When you move up through like the ladder series to get, to K&N or, whatever series, do you really notice like the competitiveness kind of increases as well? Or, in some cases it's probably a lot of the same people. Do you really notice like a big, like kind of going from the minor leagues to the big leagues?
I think you do, in the sense of like having more media. I remember the biggest thing was like when I started racing ARCA, it was like even the end of like when I started racing late models, you kind of start gaining fans, you gain a little popularity, you do have to start doing a lot more media type stuff. But I think that I remember going to my go-kart races when I was younger, and it was just as competitive as going to a K&N race. Like I cared just as much, at least personally, and I thought it was, at the time, I thought it was just as important as as anything. You know, I showed up to every race that I ever been to, like trying to win just as much as whether it was a go-kart race when I was 12 years old or whether it was an ARCA race. And when you just put your heart and soul into it, you care. Because at the time when I was 12, that was the biggest. A go-kart race was like the biggest thing I had ever in my life. Like when I went to a big go-kart race, so I cared just as about that. At that time, that was just important as much to me as when I went and did the ARCA races and stuff. So I think the competition's there or once you start racing, at least for me. And then the only thing you do notice is kind of like getting closer to the Cup Series or wherever you're trying to go. The fan base, the media starts coming along a little bit, but the competition's still there.
Yeah, I really felt like so Jagger's first ARCA West race was at Las Vegas Motor Speedway on the dirt. First time you ever run dirt, and you led a huge portion of that race. And now it's become a pretty kind of famous video because Haley Deegan, at the end, and to her credit, man, she, you had lap traffic issues, and she was able to get to you, and she got in there and she got by you. And really, in a lot of ways, I felt like that was a huge boon to her career because it happened in Vegas, it happened on a Cup weekend, and so to kind of go along with it, it was just kind of the right media situation, I think, for her. And it sure looked to me like that really, helped her. And it helped you, too, because it put you on the map.
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah, I feel like that was definitely one that got away. That was one that definitely hurt at the time, even now looking back on it. But I feel like media-wise, I probably got more media from it, honestly, finishing second from it, which obviously I wanted to win. Yeah, that was definitely a tough race. That was my first K&N race. I'd only drove the car twice before that, and my first dirt race ever. So, we just about dominated. I ended up hitting a lap car on the last lap and getting past. And I didn't have any radio. My radio went out. I couldn't see in the mirror because it was so dusty in the back. The whole back windshield was covered in dirt. So I was kind of just
no Swiffer.
The ride.
You didn't get the Swiffer, huh?
No, it was my back windshield was all dusted up. So I looked in the rearview mirror. I couldn't see anything. I didn't have a side mirror in that car, which would have maybe been a little helpful. No, my radio went out like the last 30 laps, and I was just like, all right, I'm just gonna drive as hard as I can. I thought I was like pretty sure I was leading. Like I even kind of like I was like not even 100% I was leading. I didn't know how many laps to go. And then I kind of saw the white flag, and all the lap cars were being a pain for no reason. And then I went to the inside on the last lap on a lap car. They hit me, and when it hit me, it just washed me up the track, and Haley was able to get inside of me, which sucked. I didn't even know she was behind me at the time, and it was the one that got away. But looking back on it, I mean, we ended up having a good year that year. We won a race later in the year, finished second in the championship. So we definitely moved on from that, learned from that, and went.
Yeah, and unfortunately, that's probably a race if that happens 4 races later in the season. That you would have had so many more laps.
And just little things like the radio probably wouldn't have had a problem with the radio. I would have just been a little bit more comfortable with the team. Just little things like that later in the season, I probably would have been able to close that one out.
So you did the K&N series, and you were able to kind of before that run for Dale Jr. a little bit and won a race. And I'm sure that helped your profile quite a bit. What type of experience was that? And you got to work with Josh Berry, right? That was your driver.
So that whole deal came together. It was my second year racing late models, and that was when Jimmy Johnson started. I talked to him a little bit at, I believe, probably Phoenix earlier at that year out at the Cup race, and him and my dad have been friends for many years since when they went back, coming from California. They both raced the Busch Series together back in the day, and they've been friends. And just getting to talk to him, he really wanted to help me in my career, which is something is awesome to me and I don't take for granted. And wanted to mentor me and see what he could do to help me in my career. And he got me and my family in contact with L.W. Miller and Junior Motorsports. So we put a deal together to run 3 of those races. And Josh was my crew chief for those races, actually. He like coached me through the whole races because he wasn't running those few races that we put together. And so having him, he obviously is a great late model racer, knows all those tracks, knows those cars super well. But just being able to drive for Junior Motorsports and Dale Earnhardt Jr. and his team was awesome, and something I'll remember forever, whether I do it again or not. Hopefully, we'll maybe one day. And then I ended up winning the first race I went and did out at Myrtle Beach, which was awesome. I was showing you guys earlier in my room here. Right there is actually a piece of the hood from that race I won out in Myrtle Beach. So it's awesome to have that. It was awesome to go do those few races, and definitely helped me from a profile media standpoint. Obviously, Junior's got a huge name, and to just being associated with that really helped.
So it helped you. I was going to say it helped you get that blue check mark in Instagram.
That's funny. Yeah. No, I just remember like up until that point, I'd only really raced on the West Coast, and just going back to the East Coast and being able to race is when it really felt like it was a big step. Because just racing in the South and NASCAR style stuff, I'd only race out in California, Vegas, on the West, Arizona on the West Coast, and just going out there and going and winning a race out on the East Coast was big.
Are you so you've done that, and then you, as we talked about, you ran the K&N series, and then you kind of come to a crossroads, and young man, education is very important. You've decided to go to college, and as we discussed, you're at High Point, and racing is kind of on the back burner to a certain degree. How do you look at, trying to, once you've established yourself in school, how do you look to try to, keep your career going?
Yeah, obviously I've been trying to put some racing stuff together. I wouldn't say racing's been on the back burner. It's just the whole COVID thing really hurt some of the sponsorship stuff we had last year. And I was already planning on going to college. No matter what, just because my grandparents and my parents both really wanted me to come and do this. And that was basically the main reason I looked at colleges out in this area near Charlotte, just because I thought, well, if I'm going to go to college, I might as well do something that's also helping my racing career by moving out here in the North Carolina and the whole like Charlotte area where all NASCAR's really based out of, and I'm about an hour away from where everything really is. And so I kind of try to do both of those, helping both of those in the same by moving out here. And yeah, it's been hard just COVID wise, just hard in general to find the money to go do it. You get to a certain point where it comes really expensive to race, even when you're up and coming. And yeah, like you were saying, what it takes. I think it's just a lot of just kind of knocking on the door, being at the races, which has been hard lately because the whole COVID deal.
Sure.
I can't go to some of the races like I would have, and be in the pits talking to Jimmy, talking to people on a pretty regular basis like I was in the past. I think that's getting better. I think that'll help. I think just trying to put whatever resources, whatever connections I do have together to see what I can do. Hopefully maybe later in this year, maybe whenever that time is. But I'm really trying to push and try to make something happen, trying to get back in something this year, if not, or put something together for next year.
Yeah, it's hard. A lot of people may or may not realize this. A lot of, especially we were talking about European drivers, so many of those deals are kind of package deals where they're backed by several different people, or maybe some sort of corporation that kind of specializes in that to where you're almost taking a loan against your career to get these deals to move up through the ranks. And we don't really see that in America. We see it more of just trying to find sponsorship dollars. And there's obviously a lot of tiers to it, and it's tough, and I'm sure it's daunting. I mean, that's, but I think that's, to be honest with you, I mean, it's not good when you're racing and you're not, but I think it's good. Probably just from that, it just shows you how hard you got to work at it, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, there's so much more to just the on-track side of things. I would say just getting to the track is a huge task in itself. Just putting the deals together to be racing. Even if you do have a big name, like I'm fortunate enough to have, it's still super hard because, like, at the end of the day, it sucks to say, but like someone's got to be paying for it. It's not a cheap sport. It's a very expensive sport. It's not like you would say football, where colleges are giving out scholarships and want you to come play. Racing is very I think you got to really push yourself and find the deals. You got to find people to help you, and it's definitely a challenge for not just me, but for everyone.
Yeah. I mean, it really today too. The social media side of it's so important. Where, because you got to show people, hey, people like me. People want to follow me. People want to see. People want to be interested in me, and it's hard, especially for a young person. I think. At least in my opinion.
And you see a lot of drivers now do like the YouTube thing, just like you said, just real big on social media in general. And I think that's kind of the age of media that we're in. It's definitely a lot different, 10, 15 years ago.
Yeah, absolutely. I think social media is huge right now. You see a lot of people doing the YouTube stuff, and I think just getting views on you just helps sponsor-wise. In the sense where it just adds value to yourself. Just marketing is getting bigger. We were talking about a little before this, just how important it is for to gain viewers in sports now these days. I feel like just promoting the most out of their athletes is what's growing the sport the most. And I think it's similar in the athletes like me trying to find sponsors. If you can add value, you can make yourself a figure, then that's when you start really getting eyes on you in and outside of the sport. And I think that's when you start finding sponsors and money to go race. Really, I feel like we're past the age of companies just wanting to have a logo space on your car. I think it's way more off the track, way more social media based than it's ever been.
I agree. I absolutely agree. There was I was a big music fan, especially the 80s rock bands and stuff like that. And a lot of them would move to LA and that. And they talk about like bands like Poison or Guns N' Roses. These bands would go out there without record deals. And they would go out there and you'd have to showcase and you'd have to show these record companies, hey, these people want to come see us. And they always said, like a band like Poison, they said, you could like them and not like them, but they put out so much energy with how they promoted themselves that they were going to get energy coming back at them. And I think that's a good mindset to think about it. You just got to put that energy out there and let that energy come back to you. And it's in one way, like, you have more control of your destiny, and another way you don't. It's you could definitely grab it by the horns and do it yourself, but it's difficult.
And it's a lot different. I think we're kind of talking about like, basketball, football.
Sure.
I mean, there's really not a lot of money that goes into, those sports. I mean, definitely not like racing. I know you, Scott, were telling me how much tires alone cost for a midget car. I can't even imagine the costs involved.
Yeah, I mean, racing just, expensive is going to keep getting more expensive. I know NASCAR is doing everything they can with the new generation car. I don't know how that affects the lower tier series at the moment because that's not rolling into them. Maybe some of the chassis will. I don't know the rules well enough to know what they can use and not use. But, yeah, it's just you got to find that money. Like, what does if you, I guess right now you would be looking to maybe doing a full truck deal or a full ARCA deal. Is kind of where you would be, I guess, right now. What is say even an ARCA deal cost right now? Like if you a full boat.
I would say start for the trucks. I have that more on top of my head, but to have like the top of the line truck program for a year, I would say it's like $2.5 million. And then I would say ARCA would be about half that. But yeah, just for like finding the money to go do that is hard, just in the sense where it's hard for companies to justify putting that much money in ARCA or trucks program. And like we were talking about, I think that's where it really comes down to social media, fan base, more of that kind of stuff rather than just the TV views. Because if you just go from the approach of, oh, I'll put my logo on your car, I don't think any really companies or businesses are going to really find the value in that. And I think it comes down to also business to business deals. I know a lot of the sponsorships that you think are just logo on the car, like general sponsorship, even in the Cup Series, a lot of them are all business based deals. And I think it really comes down to finding value for them. It's super hard to do that. And like we said, it's just expensive.
Yeah, it really is. And the cost has just exploded in all series, across all. IndyCar's done their best to try to reel that in with the spec car. Obviously NASCAR is going down that same route, essentially. The only bad part is some of the people you cut out, some of the things, the money you save is actually on people working on them, which is a good expense saver, but then you feel bad because people have lost their jobs, you know?
Yeah, and it sucks in some ways. I mean, there's different ways of looking at it, but going more towards the spec standpoint, obviously people are going to have a negative view of that, but it brings down the costs. I know NASCAR's, like you were saying, is heading that way. I think there's a lot of things they can do to help the cost of the lower series, but in different ways they can promote it where it doesn't have to be so expensive to make it to the Cup Series necessarily, and make it more based on talent. But it's really hard to do that because I don't know, you have to change just kind of like the whole way racing works, and has worked for like forever.
Yeah, no, you're right. Aaron really deals more in a lot of ways, kind of more of the, how do I put this, somewhat of, I don't want to make this sound funny. It just, you like really see the sport as a fan. Where like Jagger and I will look at it a little differently. So as a fan, a heavily vested fan, but as a fan, like what do you perceive of the sport? Like, what do you perceive of NASCAR right now?
And I think, this kind of goes on what we were talking about earlier about really the marketing strategies. And I think, NASCAR right now, they introduced a new team last year with Denny Hamlin and Michael Jordan, and I think that's having a huge impact.
I agree.
And they also talked about they're releasing the Netflix documentary on Bubba. So anything like that, we were also talking about Drive to Survive. In F1, NASCAR was talking about doing something similar to Netflix. And then, like with IndyCar, IndyCar's really kind of missed out, I think, on a lot of those fronts, as far as, social media marketing. We were talking about the, what was the special they used to do before the races?
Like IndyCar 36.
Yeah, IndyCar
like
36. That. Yeah. And I think that's the stuff that really kind of connects the fan to the sport. And I think one thing This probably is part of the reason why I'm a big racing fan is how close you can get to, the drivers, the cars. I mean, pretty much every single IndyCar track, I'm pretty sure IndyCar has a requirement that they have to sell a garage pass to the average fan so they can get into the garage. And I think that's a huge part of the sport. And there's really no other sports, you can do that. Like you can go into the garage at Indy, walk right up to Mario Andretti. We're talking about NASCAR. You can walk up to Richard Petty, and I mean, they'll sign for you, take a photo. And I mean, you really can't do that with you can't do that with Michael Jordan. So I think that's, one thing that definitely helps the sport. Yeah.
Hey, that brings me to an interesting question for Jagger. As someone who kind of grew up in the sport, and you are friends, as you talked about, with Jimmy Johnson, he's been a mentor of yours. Have you ever been starstruck at a driver? Has there ever been a driver you're like, have you ever thought, man?
I mean, yeah, I think you get that around anyone that's somewhat higher up than you of what you're racing. But I think for me, I mean, I hate to say it, but like I've been around at the racetrack and I kind of grew up in that sense. But obviously, yeah, I've been starstruck a little bit, but I would say probably a little less than the average.
Sure.
Because when I was young, I was at the track meeting these people. So it was kind of just a gradual me growing up. It wasn't a me growing up and then, for the first time when I'm 15 years old, I got to meet this person. But definitely, no, you get that. And especially the people that have done so much in our sport, like Jimmy, like going to meet someone like Mario Andretti or people like that. Obviously, you're like, wow, this is the person you always hear about. And I think no matter what, you'll get that with anyone.
You ever met AJ?
I have, yes, at Indy. I think the last time I was there, which was I think 5 years ago now.
Yeah, 5 years. 100's running, I think, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Now you talk about bigger in life. Now there's a guy who's bigger than life. I mean, yeah, he's definitely is very special, especially to the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. That's for sure.
I think,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Going off that, one of the coolest people I was able to meet was Dan Gurney a few years ago.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and that was one who I hadn't met, and then finally got to meet when I was a little older, and it was cool just always hearing so much about my dad racing for him and him racing against my grandpa and all that.
Oh, one thing I just thought of, I know you did some Baja stuff with Don Perdome, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So how did that happen?
Awesome. So Don and my dad became friends, and Don wanted to get a razor, and next thing you know, my dad talked him into going down and doing the Nora 1000, which isn't super competitive. It's not like a super competitive. A lot of old school. It's kind of like in the mix between like an actual race and a kids race. And so my dad talked him into building a car to go do that. And I raced that race that year with my brother, actually. And I got to meet Don for the first time. I spent a whole week with him. It's a week-long race from Ensenada to Cabo. It's actually happening right now this week. They started today. But so that was cool getting to meet him that year. And then the next year, he didn't want to do it all alone. He wanted to drive about a quarter of it and have someone else do the other stages, the long ones. And since I got to know him the year before and him wanting to come back and doing it with my dad, who was running the team again the next year, my dad was like, perfect, put Jagger in there. He'll do whatever you don't want to do. About 2/3 of the race. And it was pretty awesome. I remember the last day I actually rode with him and like co-drove for him while he was driving, which was a new experience. I hadn't done that before in a race situation, but it was pretty cool. And then he drove with me in the passenger seat the second half of the day, and I think I scared him a little bit. I don't think he'd sat passenger seat ever in his life either. But no, he was definitely impressed, and it was a cool experience. Just obviously a huge legend in his sport, a great guy. It was awesome to just do that race with him, especially since I was 16 years old and he was, I think, 78 at the time.
Oh,
So
wow.
definitely a clash of the ages, about as opposite as you could get.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
And
man, is there anybody cooler than Don Perdome, though?
No, he's awesome. He's cool. He's a great guy.
And to be 78 and still, still doing that. I'm sure.
He's 80 and he's doing it. They started today. So
Wow.
And yeah.
And I'm sure he's pretty fast, right?
Yeah, no, he's pretty good. He doesn't have a lot of experience at all driving other type of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I would say drag racing is like even more different. Couldn't be more different than off-road racing, but he definitely goes out and takes his car out, that his Razor Can-Am that he has now, out a lot out in the desert and gets some miles in it. And he's definitely gotten better. I remember helping him a little bit, coaching him when I was riding with him in that week. So yeah, no, it's awesome to see him doing that 80. Hopefully I'm still doing stuff like that at 80. We'll see.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
I'm hopefully I'm just upright at the age of 80.
Yeah, exactly.
That's that is so cool. I mean, and for a young man like yourself to be able to spend time with somebody like Don Perdome, and
absolutely.
I'm sure you got some lessons and some stories and
100%.
some things that you probably can't even talk about here, but that's good though. Every young man needs that.
Mm.
And so, as we're kind of winding this down, I got to tell you, man, first of all, thank you so much for coming in and doing this. And just where do you realistically, I mean, where do you want to be within the next 3 years? I mean, racing wise.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard for me to say right now. I mean, obviously the end goal for me, I would say, is still trying to make it in the NASCAR scene. But I mean, at the end of the day, like, my family's just been race car drivers their whole life. And I don't know, hit my window. It sounded like a bird, maybe. But
better than a brook that come through mine on Valentine's Day.
Oh, yeah.
I heard about that. Yeah, and I'm not even on the bottom floor, so it had to have been a bird or something like that. But yeah, going back to the question, yeah, I just want to be a race car driver too, whether wherever that takes me in the next few years. Hopefully I'm still racing. Obviously, I'm in college. I'm just finishing up my freshman year, so hoping to finish that in the next 4 years or so. And I don't know. That's a tough question, but I just hope I'm racing, hopefully doing some either truck or Xfinity stuff by then. Kind of getting back on the path towards where I want to be. Hopefully we can put some racing stuff together the next couple of months. Hopefully to get back in the car here soon. So we'll see, but I'm pretty open. I don't know. It's hopefully
tough.
Yeah.
It's tough, man. I mean, of course you see yourself in Cup like next week, right? But I mean, that's the goal. And but the reality takes a little longer than the dream, right?
Yeah, absolutely. But by no means is it over, and hopefully next few years.
Well, you got the right mindset, and I know that you're pretty just for the little interactions that we've had, that kind of when you set your mind to something, you do it.
Yeah.
And I just I really believe that you have still a great future in the sport, and things will go your way. You just got to keep working at it. Kind of a thing about the Racer to Racer podcast. We always like to try to give the person we're interviewing a chance to talk about somebody who's maybe influenced them or somebody that's helped them along the way, or that give you a chance to talk about somebody else in the sport. And I know we've kind of covered that a little bit already with some different people, but is there anybody that you could just point to and say, man, I got to thank that person, or man, this person did this for me, or?
Might take me a second to think. I think one that comes to my head, which you wouldn't expect, would be definitely my younger brother, Jace. I think just watching him race, he's a super talented race car driver. I've even learned a lot from him, just knowing him so well. We have a really close relationship. He's always watching him race. He's always like taught me kind of that last like aggression that I needed, because I think if we could meet in the middle, like aggression, we'd probably make a perfect race car driver. But I think just that, being able to coach him and kind of guide him along has taught me a lot. It's cool to have someone younger that looks up to you in the racing scene and just like in general. So I think that's been a cool experience. Obviously, we've had a great relationship. I would say he's even more naturally talented than I am. He's a good driver. I mean, I know right when once I left the late model program that I was running, he got in the seat and ended up winning like 4 races in the first year. So he's a talented kid, and hopefully both of us will be racing against each other one day.
I think he will. You know, he's the youngest winner ever at Irwindale. Is that right?
Yes, in the late model, he like just turned 14 and he won like
yeah,
he got to 14 to even run the late model series there.
Yeah, he is a special talent. Now I've heard a rumor. Is he truly riding bulls, learning how to ride bulls right now?
Yeah, the 3 things he's doing right now, probably the worst 3 things. He's training UFC fighting, riding bulls, and playing football. Those are his 3 things he's got going on right now. So if he makes it to 30, he'll be lucky.
Hey man,
but depending on what series he
riding dirt bikes, that's his other thing.
Sorry, we got cut out there. Depending on where he ends up racing, I know at some point there's contracts that says you can't do stuff like that.
Yeah, absolutely. But he's definitely he's got the wild factor in him.
Right.
Remember, I was at when he won his first late model race. He did a little Carl Edwards, did a backflip for the fans. So.
Hey, he does a standing backflip too.
Yeah, he did it standing in front of the car, not even off the car.
Yeah, he's a tough dude.
Mm-hmm.
He's big too now. Yeah, I mean, he's not a little guy.
No, not at all.
I would not want Jace to get a hold of me. I can tell you that right now.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember there was a point where I could push him around a little bit, and there was a point where no more.
Yeah.
He could push me around.
Yeah, but you're working out now, so.
Yeah. We weigh about the same, but he's a little shorter, so he's got a little more, I would say, muscle on him, maybe just a little bit.
Well, I tell you what, talking about, sorry, Scott. I was going to say, talking about working out, I just started, we were talking about mountain biking a little bit before we started. Mm-hmm. I started mountain biking in the summer, and that's a great workout in itself. I never realized it would be that good of a workout.
Oh, yeah, it's tough. I mean, especially when you're out in Arizona in the summer. And
I bet.
Something degrees, and it's tough. And even some of the riding I do, since it's pretty more aggressive, we got a lot of rocks and stuff out in Arizona. It even helps, like, you think usually it's all just pedaling cardio, but the arm pump and the hand pump is really similar, going through like those descending, going downhill, going through like that rocky sections when you're going pretty fast. Like my hands, you just get so much hand and arm pump.
Right.
And you don't really get that a lot in anything else that compares to racing, I would say.
Oh, and I never thought of that.
If I can ride like a mountain bike, like down the whole mountain without stopping, I would say my hands are just as beat as like after a race, and you can't experience that a lot, if not worse.
My favorite part about mountain biking is the downhill, but the problem with the downhill, as you know, you have to go uphill at some point, unless you're a bike park and they have lifts. But yeah,
me too.
Lifts? You use lifts?
No, like ski. Yeah, no. So a lot of the
what?
Like Whistler, for example, is a ski resort during the winter, and then during the summer they use like the same. They use the ski lifts, and you just go up to the top of the mountain.
Yeah, and ride down. Yeah, it's awesome. It's fun.
Sounds like cheating to me a little bit.
Yeah, but there's like it depends like what style of mountain biking you're trying to ride. If you're like more downhill oriented, you got like bigger shocks on there, bigger tires, you're hitting huge drops, huge jumps, going through like rock gardens.
Sure.
Pretty awesome. Yeah. And then there's obviously like the cross country side of it where you got like the people that are just in insane shape trying to pedal as fast as they can.
Aaron, am I correct in saying your poor father's taken up this sport as well?
Yeah, so he started doing it. So I took him to Brown County. We were talking about Brown County a little bit, but Brown County actually, a lot of people wouldn't think Indiana has, that good of mountain biking, but actually Brown County, I don't know if you ever heard of it, Jagger, but they've been like I think they're still in like the top 10 mountain biking destinations in the country.
Yeah.
So I took him there, and it was kind of muddy, and you were talking about, when it's wet, it's not the best to ride in, and he went through a corner. It was a downhill section, and as he said, he spun out. I said, "How do you spin out on a bike?" He's like, "Well, I did."
That's funny. Yeah, no, mountain biking is huge. I think it's growing too right now.
Oh yeah, pandemic helped. So
yeah, absolutely. You try to buy a bike right now, they're all sold out. Everything outdoors, from motorcycles, bikes, or RVs, they're all sold out. You can't get a hold of any of that. And you look at any like car commercial, like any look at the new Ford commercial, and they show mountain bikes in it. I don't know what that's about, but I think it's definitely growing, and it's a good training device, but it's also like a huge hobby I have, just in general.
But yeah, if you ever come to Indiana and you have your bike, let me know.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, it'll be fun. Or if you're ever out in North Carolina or by any chance, then.
Oh, I couldn't even come close to you. I'm slow, so it wouldn't even be. It'd be embarrassing if anything.
No, it's just fun. It's a good time,
for sure.
Especially the places you go, the places you see. Not a lot of people else are out there. It's a good way to see the world.
Well, your Instagram, you always got those great photos from the desert.
I know. People probably get
tired. I don't know, man. That's a pretty good view. It's hard to get tired of that view.
Yeah, and you're like, you get up to the top of the mountain, you're like, wow, I worked so hard for this. I got to put it on Instagram,
Right.
You're like,
I felt that before,
I felt the pain of that one. I've got to show it off to some people at least.
Well, Jagger Jones, I want to say thank you for being our first guest. A little behind-the-scenes baseball for the fans watching this. We've had some technical issues, but we've corrected them, and Jagger was very kind enough to sit through those, and we will get better. We will have you back, especially when we get the racing cranked up. And, do you have any sponsors or anything that you would like to promote while you're on here? Or?
Yeah, well, first I just want to say thanks for having me on the first episode. I look forward to hearing and seeing the future of what you guys got going on here. I think it's a good show, absolutely. And yeah, I'd love to come back on, and hopefully you guys just follow me on social media. I'll obviously be updating my racing and just my life in general, and hopefully we'll be at a racetrack somewhere here soon.
Yeah, have you ever thought about running midgets?
I've raced a pavement midget twice, and I've driven a dirt midget once. I raced at Vegas in a pavement midget and Madeira, and I actually enjoyed it. It was fun. It was a different deal, but I think running on dirt would be cool. I don't know how my parents would feel about a car. Maybe a midget would be fine, but I wouldn't be opposed to driving anything.
I know. That well, maybe one day we can get you back here. We'll get
awesome.
You in midget. All right. Well, thanks everybody for tuning in. Aaron, you got anything you want to say?
Nope. I was going to say thanks, Jagger. Appreciate it. Loved having you as the first guest. And like I said, sorry we had some technical issues at the front, but that's kind of what happens on your first episode. So I think we've got those kinks worked out. But no, definitely appreciate it. And I definitely wish you the best of luck in the future with your racing career. And hopefully maybe sometime we can do some mountain biking. And hey, maybe we get Scott out there too.
Oh, hey, probably not.
Uh,
Do they have mountain biking that I can follow in a golf cart?
Probably not.
We go to like the downhill park, and you could just ride. He could just ride the ski lift up and down, Jagger.
Watches. I know we were talking about YouTube and social media. I think we can make maybe a YouTube video out of that one.
Oh, absolutely.
No, I don't think we can do that. It would be funny though. I have not ridden a bicycle, legitimately ridden a bicycle since the day I got my driver's license.
That's funny.
My dad will let you use his bike, I guarantee. If I tell him that, he'll be like, yeah, Scott can use the bike, so we got to a bike.
Yeah, we're all right. We're okay. I do have good insurance, though. So, I mean, if I fell, the hospital time would not be so costly. But
all right, well, before we go off topic even more here, thanks, everyone, for listening, and we'll talk to you soon.